Hey guys, welcome to this spooky Halloween themed deck guide. This week we're going to be looking at the Haunted Husk deck that I've used in most of my tournaments so far. This card here is really strong in the meta right now and can just be put into so many different decks. It will require the Resurgence DLC for Husks and for Blightborn Spectres, and also the Chronicles of Gagana DLC for Amai Merchant and Barter. But if you don't want to buy all of these, I'll put a link in the description to FTW Cheese's list that uses only the Resurgence DLC. So Husk is really incredible value for what it is. It only costs you 1 Faeria, and it's effective drawing if your opponent has 4 or more cards in hand. Happens at the end step, so you only ever play this if that condition is met, which means that you're guaranteed to draw at least once from this, and then you also drain your opponent by 1. So to help with this 4 card count, we've got Storyteller, which draws 2 cards, and Amai Merchant. So Merchant shows you 3 different cards with the Discover, and you have to pick one of these to go into your hand while the other 2 go to your opponent. This card is usually really strong because you can choose to give your opponent just bad cards, fill their hand with this dead weight, and then you get an extra potentially decent card to use for yourself. Although sometimes you'll have 2 cards in that pool of 3 that are good cards, and you'll be forced to give them one of those. So that is one downside to Merchant. And what to choose here will depend on what deck they're playing and what you currently have in hand as well. So you want to give them cards that you have easy answers to. So for example, if you had a Wind Soldier and Training in hand, let's say, you know that you could deal with any sort of 4 life creatures. And the land requirement is also another thing to consider. If they are playing a deck with a low land requirement, then you may even consider giving them something really strong like Twin Soul Spirit or something like that. This deck itself only wants to go up to 3 deserts, so keep that in mind as well when you're picking these cards. But I think that it's usually more important to give your opponent some unplayable cards rather than giving yourself good cards. And there are some also pretty standard good cards that you can pick that I'll go over quickly. So Merchant gives you cards that are 5 cost, so you can view all of those cards by filtering in this deck list down here, clicking on the number 5, and that will filter by all the 5 cost cards for you to look at. So I'll just talk about a few of them. Royal Judge here is a really interesting pick with Merchant because these cards that Merchant gives you and your opponent are wild, and wild counts as a neutral card. So Royal Judge gives you a punishment which lets you deal 5 damage to a neutral creature. So if you pick Royal Judge, then you potentially have an answer to one of those wild cards that you've just given your opponent with that punishment there. Other cards, Imperial Drake Rider is an alright card. Lamacorn is really nice to give to your opponent. They never usually want to play this because this draw that happens plays into your game plan, so this is sort of a dead card for them. Champions, usually not a good card, but remember, if they are playing Rakoans, they will get a ton of value off this, so just keep in mind what deck they're playing there. No legendaries. Merchant only draws non-legendaries. Grizzly is a decent card. Boar, depending on what the player has, this can be a decent card if they've got 5 life creatures. If you've got Spectres out, or Colossus, this can be decent for yourself as well. Kodama is an interesting one. I think you could give this one to your opponent if they don't have so much board control, But if they do have board control, maybe they're playing green-blue and they just have a lot of ways to collect and things, this is not a good thing to give your opponent because it's quite the sturdy body. But if they don't have collectors, then this not being able to harvest Faeria makes it really awkward for them. Grove Guardian's pretty decent. Tyrion Golem's pretty decent. Swordfish is really good. So is Frog Tosser. Of course, this is a 6 land requirement. So remember that, like I said, if your opponent is not running so many lands, this may even be a decent thing to give your opponent. Whereas if you took this yourself, you only build up to 3 lands, so this would require you to build 3 additional lands just to use it, which can sometimes be worth it. You never want to give this to your opponent if they are going to be building up to those 6 lands. Here, nothing's all that great. Tidelord's pretty decent. It's a 5/5 jumper for 5, so if you pick this yourself, it's just sort of solid value. Phantasm is an interesting one. Normally this is an unplayable card because 5 likes is kind of ridiculous to build up to just for this. But because Merchant makes this wild, it becomes then playable, especially for yourself. You do have to build those 2 additional lands, but if you need some hard removal, like they've got a creature that's getting out of hand, this can be used as hard removal for that. Glidehopper is pretty decent, so is Towship. In red, Salamander can be decent sometimes. It's kind of a form of removal. Underground Boss is always like an insta-pick, in my opinion, depending what the other cards are, but this is very strong. Beast Trainer sucks, so it's very good to give to your opponent unless they're playing beasts. Bomb Slinger is amazing. Firestorm is also really good. Flamestoker can sometimes look a bit deceiving because it looks like it could get out of hand just by +1ing all the time, but the thing with most decks is this does not play to their game plan, so this is usually an awful card to have. Adventurer is pretty decent if you're able to step this onto enemy lands. Raccoacopter is really good. Cannon Carrier is really good. In yellow, of course, if you get Spectre, that's really good for you. But again, try and give your opponent bad cards as opposed to giving yourself good cards. That's sort of the priority you want to make there. Monstrosity can sometimes get use, especially if you pick this and you've got Wind Soldiers and things. You can give that 3 attack to this Monstrosities, and as well as any other thing that dies. Manta Rider's really good. Windborn Champion's really good. And I believe that is it. Twin Soul Spirit is also really good. But like I said, 6 land, so always consider that as well. So then we've got in our list Soul Pact. Soul Pact is great in this deck because of all the cards that you're going to be getting from Teller and Merchant. It's 2 free Faeria essentially, so the strategy with this card is to keep it in your hand until it's absolutely necessary to play. In any card game, you want to keep as much information hidden as possible from your opponent so that they don't know what you have and they won't be expecting you to just suddenly gain 2 Faeria out of nowhere. The only times that I would play this preemptively is if I were on full health and I wanted to play a Storyteller that turn, or even a Soul Drain if I happen to get that off of the barter. Because in this game you can't overheal with this 2 life, so you might as well take this free healing while you're at it by Soul Pacting first, damaging yourself by 2, and then just simply healing that back up. So these cards here, Storyteller, Soul Pact, Husk, and Merchant, are kind of known as the Husk package. They all synergize really well with each other, and you can include this package in pretty much any deck and do well with it. Husk has this 1 wild land requirement here, so it makes it really easy to add a second color to this type of list as well. In this deck, I have decided to pile on even more synergy using Blightborn Spectre, which also has a 4-land, or a 4-card condition for its ability. But this one is production instead of end step, so it's a little bit more difficult to pull off. You can fill your opponent's hand with all of these cards, but then they have one turn to try and empty their hand before this production happens. But for a 5 cost, the 3/6 stats with charge 2 is pretty decent in my opinion, and the charge 2 also synergizes with mobility tricks like Fanatic or Training. Colossus is a great win condition for this deck as well. Like I said, your land requirement is only 3 deserts, and the playstyle for this is more control-like with some tempo sort of aspects. So you don't want to push your lands up aggressive right away usually, but if you can get this down to like a 5 cost or something near that, then you can dash it right next to your opponent's face to put on this surprise amount of pressure. And Barter works really well with Colossus since it essentially counts as 2 events when you play it, and also play the card that you get from it. And also, if your opponent is playing Barter, you could possibly barter for more barters and just barter infinitely until you get this Colossus down to 5 cost. And then in the Mulligan, you're going to look for either Teller or Merchant or Blightborn Spectre as your starting creatures. I'm only running 8 starting creatures in this list, which is a little bit low, especially having all of these events in the deck, but I've found that this has worked for me for the most part. If your hand is getting really dead, you can always drop these Fanatics or play your events to get some slightly discounted Colossus that you can play down as collectors, but prioritize full mulliganing for one of those starting creatures. And once you have one of those, I would go to the second and third cards that you want to get, maybe trying to get Husk. Barter is kind of a nice sort of removal spell a lot of the time, so this can be a nice card. Fanatic as a second card is pretty nice as well, gives you a mobility trick and another a collector. Soul Pact can kind of be a nice card to keep alongside Merchant, since you can play that 5 cost creature really quickly using Soul Pact. Soul Pact and Teller is kind of a nice combo as well, since you get that healing in. So that's it for the Mulligan, and as I mentioned before, there's another list that Cheese has made, and this one involves monks and some other things, so I've put a link for that in the description for that deck list. And I've been considering swapping these monks with Blightborn Spectre for a while, but I haven't gotten around to testing it yet, so I'm not 100% confident on that switch. But be sure to check up on my Discord channel where I post updates to all of these deck guides that I make. Sometimes I think of things after the fact and put those things up there. So if you do decide to use this card though, I would definitely put in 3 storytellers to synergize with this. Whenever you draw a card, gain +1/+0. And also because Monk doesn't have charge 2 like the Spectres do, you may want to bump up to 3 Kaleem's Training as well for that extra mobility. Monk is stronger than Spectre in a lot of ways. The main reason being the Faeria cost is 1 less, and yet it still maintains a 5 life, so it's 1 less, but that's pretty strong considering the less Faeria cost. And this draw is a lot easier to trigger than this production ability. So there's a lot of benefits to Monk, but also some benefits to Spectre as well. And there's another variant of this deck that uses Intrepid Explorer. This gives you an Explore card, you and your opponent, which isn't a great way to fill your opponent's hand like these other cards do, since Explore is a free card to play. But if you pair this up with Time of Legends, and use Time of Legends to draw into Rapala, you can fill your opponent's hand with Ruby Fish, play the Intrepid Explorer, and then they won't get the Explore card since their hand is now full. And this combo here is very specific, so I don't like it too much, but it is a fun one to pull off. Other cards to consider in yellow, we've got Soul Drain. So I'm not actually running Soul Drain in this list. Most yellow lists do, but I've decided to sub in Barters instead. I just really like the card Barter. But you might decide that Soul Drain is better for you. It's a lot more specific than Barter, especially if you're against Burn or something. This 2 life that you get can be very helpful. So Soul Drain's always a consideration. Shaitan Demon is a very solid card for what it is. 3 cost 5/4 is very powerful. And this production that deals 2 damage to yourself, I believe I've talked about this in guides before, but dealing 2 damage to yourself hardly matters as long as this is in relevant positions and putting mass amounts of pressure on the board just for this Faeria cost. So this is a very strong card. Ariana is a reasonable card. I don't like her too much in this list. She can be a little hard to use, but always a consideration. Another one is Dustbringer Wraith. So this kind of synergizes again with how the list is going. If you get this Corrupt off, you get to increase the cost of each card in your opponent's hand by 1. So after you've filled your opponent's hand with all of these cards, with Storyteller and Merchant, a Dustbringer Wraith comes down and just increases all of the Faeria cost to your opponent's cards. But I don't like this card very much because it's got no sort of mobility attached to it. So it makes it really difficult to get onto opponent's lands. You do have some mobility tricks in here, but I still think that it's not as effective. You can definitely play around with it, and it's not a bad card. The stats alone are pretty solid for 4 cost. Same stats as Spectre, actually, for 1 cost less. So, certainly a thing to consider. Last card I want to talk about here is Nightmare. So, Last Nightmare is a straight-up destroy a creature, which is usually pretty good, but I find that it's quite expensive for what it is, and in the current meta, or the competitive meta at least, there's not a whole lot of big creatures running around, so you can usually deal with things pretty efficiently without using Nightmare, and then you're saving yourself this Faeria cost. Also, you have these Barters here, which could potentially draw you into some hard removal like Nightmare or Frogifies or something like that. So that's another reason that I like Barter, is you've got potential hard removal from your opponent's decks. Alright, so that's going to be everything I want to say on that. So let's get into land placement. So land placement is pretty simple for this deck. Normally you want to start with a desert center here, and then start building your deserts towards one side of the wells. And the reason you want to start in the center is for your Blightborn Spectres, also your Origin Fanatics. It just lets them push between different sides of the wells, and then once you build this land path, you can start building up this way. Your Spectres can charge up there, or you could start building this way. So that's after you've built your 3 deserts. You have the option to double neutral instead. So that's what I mean. You could double neutral up this way for double collection, or if there's too much stuff up here, you could double neutral over here instead. Or of course, once you've got those 3 deserts, you could instead draw or +1. But with Storyteller, it's kind of interesting because it's a turn 1 play. So here I have the option to start with desert to the side like this, and put Storyteller in a collection spot right off the bat. The one disadvantage to playing an early storyteller is that it gives your opponents more cards and more answers to find to kill this storyteller. But I feel like with this particular hand that I started with no other creatures, getting this down right away seemed pretty good. If I had other creatures in my hand, I may hold this. Like, let's say I had a Blightborn Spectre. I think I would hold on to this storyteller and just build a Desert Center so that I'm building proper lands for my Blightborn Spectre. If I start to the side with a Spectre already in my hand, it's going to make it very awkward for that Spectre to move around the board. And also, holding on to this storyteller, not playing it right away, well, again, it won't give your opponent so many answers. But here, because I had nothing else, I wanted to play that storyteller down. So the game plan here is to play a little bit slower at the start. You want to try and get drawing into these storytellers and merchants and dropping these husks, getting lots of value off of these, and you want to try and control the board as much as you can. So you usually use your creatures to do that. Your Blightborn Spectres can dart around the map pretty easily, especially with flash winds and things. Trainings help you move across the ocean without needing to build so many lands. So that's kind of the game plan there. Control the board until you're ready to push up a lot of damage. And usually that's going to be your Colossus coming down when you're ready to push that damage. Once you've controlled the board well enough, and then you can start pushing really aggressive. If you have monks in this list instead, you would probably do a similar opening to this to the side, since you won't be running specters and you won't really need these lands so much. So with monks, opening to the side is a good plan as well. Alright, so let's get into a sample match now. So let's get rid of all of this. Hope for these things, that's good. So, because I've got that other creature, I don't particularly want to play the Teller just yet. I'd like to hold off one more turn. Set up these lands a bit better. But if you got monks in the deck and things, I think it's a lot better to start side. So that is one advantage to running monks over the specters and everything. Let's start with the merchant, I think. These cards are a little more useless for them to have. Both Tow Ship and Copter are very good, but I'm gonna go for that Copter here. So this can deal with the Battle Toads if they come down. Going to try to fight my same side. Archon. Okay, so we could clear this Archon with Wind Soldier plus training. I like that a lot. Can also get this collection off if I put this desert up aggressive like this, which is also really nice because that sets up a nice double neutral line with this Copter the next turn. If I step here, I'm playing into Ninja Toad. Or I suppose he has to build that like anyways, so it doesn't matter where I step this. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7 if I want to tell her. But that's all I'm going to be playing. Oh, I get 1 extra Faeria, so I could find something with this actually. Running out the clock. Never a good thing to do. Okay, we got a Husk, so that's excellent. get to Husk, as well as play all of those things. So that was an excellent turn. Oh, he triggered. Okay, so we'll be out of copter range. Can't have everything go our way. The nice thing here is this is a Wind Soldier line. I've already drawn one, but I might draw another. Okay, so now I've got a copter target here. This definitely comes down this turn, because I'm going to be healing at least one from this. I think the only play here is just going to be copter to kill this. If I +1, I can't really do much else. Unfortunately, this is going to be a problem if I can't deal with this soon. So let's just +1. I also have Storyteller in hand, so that's going to be a ton of cards. So he just played the tow ship. That was the one card I was really afraid of from that merchant that I gave him. I don't remember what the other card was. I think it was that 4/5 that draws a treasure or something. Suppose I need to build a land to collect with this. Oh. Yeah. Spectre. Probably just wanting to play the Spectre down this turn. Definitely need to collect. Don't think I want to run this into this lake. I also want to block his Mystic Beast spot though, so I think I will take this land. I was thinking of retreating, so we wouldn't have an easy clear there, but building this neutral means Mystic Beast is blocked, and I want to build this land so I have a dash line for Colossus in the future. Yeah, just the Spectre will come down. He has the option to clear this next turn, but that should be fine. It's already gained me 2 cards and 2 life. So it's replaced itself and then some. So against mono blue, it's really important to try and keep board control because of just how much board control they can keep. Ah, a warden. Okay, so have the option to deal with this or this, and I think this is the most threatening one because it's double collecting for him. So I do have 6 damage here. This puts him down to 3 life in range of Ninja Toad, but I think that's okay. So what I want to do here is probably Spectre and Husk. Any way I can protect the Husk? I can put Spectre in this spot and Husk here. Or Husk here. So I think this will definitely happen. Yeah, we got a Spectre here, +1. You never want to play Husk while you're behind, by the way. In this position I do have creatures on board, but if I didn't, I wouldn't want to play this. Even though it's juicy value and everything draws you cards, you want to save that Faeria for other things. So I think this is actually a really good spot, because this Ninja Toad won't be able to collect here. Could even Flash Wind this up for collection, but I think I want to save this Flash Wind to possibly deal with this. Actually, if I Flash Winded this up, then it just gives him access to a Ninja Toad line to double collect again. So keeping this here is important. Nice thing is, oh, okay.
Would you like some tea?
That's kind of nice for him. He loses a little bit of value, but I don't have some very easy answers to this right now. So we got Merchant and Teller. I can collect up to 5, can +1 for 6. So I could potentially play both of these, bringing him to, what's that, 10 cards? So we can get him to mill some stuff. Let's try and do that. Not sure if the order matters. So let's grab the boss. I am giving him some cards. But I think that's alright. Giving myself a lot of cards as well, so I won't mill myself just yet. So he lost a Water Ellie and a Commander. I think the Water Ellie he probably wouldn't want to play anyways. So what did I give him? I gave him Grizzly and something else. Perfectly fine with him clearing my Husk here, actually. I've got plenty of things to play in my hand, and this 1 damage isn't like a huge deal. I think the card draw is the big thing to look out for. And considering I have now all of these cards, all of these answers in hand, I don't think I need this Husk anymore. So now either I use Merchant, Wind Soldier. Soul Pact is excellent. So I think this is going to come down no matter what. Need to get all these things out. So I have a clear here, or I have a clear with Wind Soldier. I think I prefer Wind Soldier. Yeah, so I haven't thought out my entire turn yet, but let's just see how this goes. I have a general idea. I think I want to kill this, Flash Wind this to get a value trade here. Yeah, so something like this. Flash Wind this over. Soul Pact, Merchant here, or here. I think this is a better spot, it's a bit more aggressive. 4 seconds to pick a card. Probably Waryak. No, this. This lets me draw a card, so I think that's a bit better. Oh, he doesn't even get the Waryak anyways. And milled an Emperor's Command. That would have been a really nice answer to this. Nice thing about that play also, clearing the Aurora. It means that he misses collection if he wants to do anything with this Toad. Fight anything. This might be a Ninja Toad coming down on that well to double collect. So he would have had that line regardless if I decided not to clear that Toad. Suppose I could have retreated and tried to gain more stats, but against blue, these big things that Gain stats every turn, can easily be taken down with Humbling Vision or Frogify. So if he doesn't play anything, I'm very happy. One short of playing Colossus. I've got all three in my hand. So I'm gonna have to settle for... Probably want to get this down. Yeah, I'll just have to put it here. Again, I don't really want to play this Husk. I'm not particularly behind right now, but I've got way too many things that I need to play in hand, so... this is gonna clutter my hand a little bit too much. Could try and find, like, soul packs with it, but I think I would rather try and save this one extra Faeria. I've already used one soul pack, or maybe two. I think I've used two. So it's not super likely. I'm also on my last 10 cards here. Okay. So there is a Colossus. I was a little bit scared that it would come down aggressive and I wouldn't have an answer to it. Now that it's come down here, I'm not so scared. Still don't have an answer to it, but maybe drop this Colossus right up to his face, and then he's forced to deal with it. So maybe I just ignore this Colossus now. Dash over here, +1, Colossus up. Yeah, I just want to probably develop this Colossus. I'll stay here so we can't get an aggressive lake. This looks like it's in my favor, but he is on 7 Faeria, able to double collect this turn. And there's a few things that he could still do. Possibly Sunken Tower into Humbling Vision. That would be something that's difficult for me to deal with. Well, this goes up to 8 life next turn, so that wouldn't be too bad. Maybe if he protects this with a Gabrian Warden, that's a pretty good answer. But then he can't... Oh yeah, he could shifting, or he could tower over, collect, +1, Warden. Another Colossus. Okay. So, he's just dropped a Colossus right next to his face, out of collection. So, okay, there's a Humbling. So, if he hadn't Humbling, I would have gladly taken the clear on this one, and just maybe retreated, left this guy just sitting there. Might be able to find a Humbling of our own now. If I don't, I still have Fanatic. So yeah, let's barter. Frogify keeps my creature alive though. So I think Frogify is something I want to pick. Oh no, I need another land. Okay, well, not the end of the world. So where is this gonna go? Probably here? Actually, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna retreat back here. So he's in a spot where he's not doing anything. Looks like he's got something. Frogify. So Frogify is not bad. No, I suppose I preferred Humbling, but that's alright. I still get mobility with this guy to hop around the board. Well, okay, I could just use this Flash Wind to clear this. So Flash Wind, and maybe just drop another aggressive Colossus then. Either Colossus or Boss. I think I'll want to get this down. He's not going to be able to deal with this right away, because he's got nothing on board to deal with it, so if he decides to Humbling Vision, he's not playing any cards this turn. Again, I don't want to play that Husk. There's no point. Yeah, this isn't going to see play for the rest of the game now, because I'm on 7 cards. He might drop an aggressive Colossus of his own. Okay. I think I should be able to race him now. So I hit him, he's down to 10. He's on no Faeria, so if he uses healing, that's all he's doing. If he uses humbling, that's all he's doing. Worst case is Frogify on this. I'll only be able to deal 7, 8, 9, and he'll be on 10. Yeah, so I like just racing here. Just drop this and actually draw here, because I want to find Wind Soldier. Ha, there we go. So there's the Frogify, the worst case scenario that I thought could happen. But we did find the Wind Soldier. So let's... Alright, so that was a long match. Sometimes that happens with these sort of control-oriented matchups. I'll try and cut this down in editing as much as I can. But thanks for watching. I sometimes think of things afterwards that I want to include in these guides, and I post those in the Discord channel. So if I ever update this deck, then you'll see that in the channel as well. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.